Have you ever wondered how the accelerated adoption of artificial intelligence is reshaping the landscape of the tech industry, particularly in terms of operational efficiency and workforce dynamics? It is a huge topic right now. And last year, I had the pleasure of discussing the burgeoning role of AI with Thomas Lahr from TSIA. And given the vast changes since then, I think it's time to revisit this crucial dialogue. Because I've been to a lot of tech conferences where big tech companies all say that AI is a co-pilot, it will complement humans rather than compete with them, while at the same time cutting back on staff to buy more GPUs so they can invest more heavily into AI. So I want to try and bust a few myths today, address what everybody's thinking about right now. So Thomas is going to join me once again to explore the profound impact AI is having on tech companies, both good and bad, from reducing headcount to enhancing profitability, creating new business opportunities, exploring innovation opportunities too. And with AI making strides in both hardware and software sectors, understanding its influence, I think it is more relevant than ever. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Ohio, where Thomas is waiting to join me once again. Well, a massive warm welcome back to the show. I think this is your hat-trick of appearances, but for anyone that's missed our previous conversations, can you just remind everyone listening with a little about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. You're right. This is the hat trick. I'm so happy to be back here, Neil. And I am Thomas Lahr, the Executive Director from the Technology and Services Industry Association. We're a for-profit research institute. We do a lot of deep operational benchmarking with technology companies to help them optimize their business model.
Every single day on this podcast, I try and get people thinking differently about the role of technology and specifically areas around our business and our world and our lives that technology impacts that we don't automatically associate with tech. So to set the scene for today's conversation, how significant is the role of AI in the operational changes within major tech companies that are part of the community there that you're working with? Because we hear a lot about AI, but not always in areas such as operational changes. So what are you seeing here?
Yeah, and I'm glad you're putting that lens on it because there's so much of the energy around AI, even for technology companies, is all about their customer-facing solutions there, right? We've got a really cool new wicked AI tool here that we want our customers to be excited about. But the reality is AI is just as much a game changer for how technology companies are managing their business internally, right? Their internal workflows. And so when we look at that, and that's what we've really had our research lens on very aggressively over the past year, that's the use case we're more interested in. And I can tell you that when you look at these companies, it's almost becoming this sort of world of have and have nots. And there are large, well-known tech companies that are, aggressively leveraging AI for their internal workflows. We're doing these case studies where we look at, hey, when you deployed AI, how much did it improve a particular KPI? Whether that KPI was not only takes to serve a customer or build a piece of educational content or whatever. And they're getting improvements anywhere from 15% to 70%, right? So massive impact there on their internal workflows. And then the flip side is I still see many tech companies that are lagging here. They're focused on AI externally. They're not as much focused on it internally. Some of them are even they got their arms crossed saying, well, could be a lot of hype. I don't know if I want to do this yet. So it is pretty fascinating because I'm sure that's playing out in every industry, right? There are companies leaning in, companies not. But even in tech, where you think everybody would be leaning in, it's still kind of bifurcated.
And one of the reasons I invited you back on the podcast was after reading your research that indicates that AI could reduce headcount by as much as 20% in tech companies. So one of the things that this struck me about is I go to a lot of tech conferences around the world, and I see a lot of companies selling AI solutions, and they're the ones saying that, no, it's not about reducing headcount, it's about being a co-pilot, it's about augmenting humans, it's about focusing on the good stuff, saying all the right things. Well, secretly, we've seen those big tech companies reducing their own headcount. So what are you seeing here, and how long do you see this happening? Is there any kind of timeline that you're seeing here?
Yeah, I mean, and this is I'll be honest with you. I mean, this is a very touchy subject.
Yeah.
For any leadership team of any company, much less these tech companies, because everyone is using this vernacular around AI is going to augment, AI is going to get rid of the really laborious, mundane work. There's nothing but upside here for our employees. But the reality is it fundamentally changes the labor equation. There's just no doubt about it. And so again, I go back to these KPI improvements. Let me just pick on one. Let's say you look at how long it takes your educational services department to create content around your products. Well, if you can reduce the amount of hours involved by 50 or 60%, that means one of two things. Either you need less employees developing content, or, and I think a more likely scenario, you can basically just freeze the amount of content developers as you grow, right? As you add more products or whatever, which I think is going to be a common scenario. So I think this question of, and we put out there 20%, and I think that's ultimately going to be conservative. And if you say, okay, if tech headcounts are going to be reduced by 20%, there's one of two ways that happens. One is companies literally say, look, I just don't need these employees anymore. I'm going to downsize. We are already seeing that. Google is one of the few companies that's been transparent when they've done these reductions in forces. They've said, hey, because we've deployed AI in this use case, we don't need these types of employees anymore. So that's one. I think the other scenario, which is also already unfolding, but takes a little bit longer to kind of see it, is tech companies basically just freeze or dramatically slow down their headcount growth, even though the revenues are growing. So if you look at Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Salesforce, those are all companies that have more revenue under management now than they did 2 or 3 years ago. And all 4 of those companies have less employees. So it's already happened.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And if I look back, though, at the same time, on the flip side of that, computers, the arrival of the internet, the arrival of the smartphone, and now AI, they all promised to give us more time, more free time. But I don't know about you, but I don't have any more free time. I'm doing 10 times the amount of work that I did do more than a decade ago. You seem to fill up those gaps with more work and other stuff, don't you?
Yeah, true.
Yeah. And on a more positive note, what kind of AI use cases have you seen show more financial or greater financial impact on businesses within the tech sector? What are you seeing there?
Yeah, because it is lumpy in a sense. And so what we do for our research is we track AI use cases across 7 very specific areas. So we look at the service activities. We say, how is AI being used in professional services, support services, education services, customer success, managed services? We also look at how AI is being used in revenue management and offer development. And what we're seeing right now, there's a very clear heat map here. There are massive ROIs for AI in both education services, as I mentioned, developing content, and support services. So this is helping customers be more self-sufficient. This is automating some of the technical knowledge workflows, all that kind of stuff. So those 2 areas, really big ROIs. And then the opposite end of the spectrum it's fascinating. If you look at revenue management, so if you look at sales organizations using AI, let's say to qualify leads, to prioritize opportunities that they chase, to do propensity on renewals, all those types of areas where AI could be applied, there's a lag there. So I think that they're going to catch up, but right now those use cases aren't as common.
And on behalf of a lot of business leaders that could be listening to this conversation all around the world, finding everything a little overwhelming, that breathtaking speed of technological change, what are the major barriers that companies are facing when integrating these new AI capabilities, and how can they overcome these obstacles? Because again, I'm seeing a certain amount of anxiousness and nervousness about knowing they need to do something, but equally it's quite challenging, isn't it?
Yeah, because I mean, and you see this with management teams, you can be frozen by this, right? I mean, you're like, gosh, I know there's something going on there. Maybe nobody in the company has any direct experience with AI and how to deploy it and where to deploy it. So there's a couple of things that I can put on the table there. When we do these industry case studies, where we're looking for where companies have successfully deployed AI in a particular use case, they have a clear, ROI they can talk about. And when you bring back the lens and you look across all of those different use case studies, you start to see some common, what we call success attributes, right? Things that happen again and again and again when people successfully deploy AI. And so we've defined 9 of those. One of them I'll put on the table here, which I think is helpful, is if you're thinking about deploying AI, you want to start, and you might not be intuitive, but start with workflows that are already well defined within your company. So as opposed to just saying, I'm going to take AI and throw out like Copilot to all my employees and kind of see what happens, we're seeing if you want an ROI, it's the opposite. So again, I'll pick on content management. Most education service organizations have a very well-defined workflow for generating their content. You look at that workflow and you say, okay, where could I insert AI? You look at support tickets, right? Hey, we have a very well-defined workflow for how the support incidents come in, how they get escalated. Where in that workflow could AI make a difference? And when you start there, it's so much easier to get the ROI. So I highly recommend that you think, again, within your company about the processes you feel you already understand pretty well. But I still bet there is huge opportunity to apply AI to that workflow. And again, you're going to get 20, 30, 40, 50% reduction in effort if you apply it in the right place.
And if companies do reduce their workforce or slow down getting new people into the business due to AI integration, I know this is a huge question again. It's a very touchy subject, as we said a few moments ago, but how should they handle the societal and ethical implications of these difficult decisions and maybe invest more in bringing people along for the ride and reskilling people? How do you see this playing out?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be a massive topic for multiple industries here over the next, couple of years, because I think, and this is not a first time technology, as you mentioned, right? Technology has come along and it has disrupted us. And I was just reading a fantastic book about the advent of the steam engine and how many workers who were really guild workers, right, that were doing everything by hand were displaced. But I think that the issue here, as I think about this, is first of all, this initial job displacement is going to happen, right? So it's not like you can look at companies and say, oh, you just deployed AI, now 50% of the employees in that particular function aren't required, but you're going to just hold on to them. That's not going to happen, right? So companies are going to go after those cost savings. I think there's no way to stop that. I think the question that gets on the table for us as a society is, once that starts to happen, there are 2 things you have to react to. Number one, how do you invest in retraining that workforce, right? So in part of that could be, okay, if AI is going to be here to stay, how do you make sure people have the right skills to work with AI? Or you train them to do something completely different, right? Because we obviously have places in our society where we need employees. So who's going to pay for that? The retraining, or if we truly have ultimately employees that are displaced and not required, how do you basically fund those people? And I think that the one thing that we don't have our heads around, because we dealt with this with manufacturing, right? So the blue collar workers, some of those jobs went away, they never came back, and there wasn't a natural place for some of those people to go. How do you support them? This would be the first time in my lifetime where we're talking about the cost of supporting unemployed white collar workers and how are we going to deal with that? So I think that is on the table. I think it's going to, unfortunately, move fast for us, faster than the blue collar shift that happened. And I think we're going to have to get our arms around it. And unfortunately, we did not learn a lot of good lessons with the previous displacement on the blue collar side. So I think we have some new muscles as a society we're going to have to build here.
Yeah, and I would also say if we did look back 20 years, there were roles like social media managers, data scientists, cloud architects, mobile app developers, SEO analysts, podcast producers that didn't actually exist 20 years ago. So there is new roles that will appear.
Definitely.
But looking ahead, though, how do you envision AI shaping the future landscape of the tech industry over the next decade? And I realise how ludicrous that is. I'm trying to make a prediction 10 years into the future with everything that's happened in 18 months. But what do you see on the horizon here?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I listen to your, I guess you're an optimist, I think, like I am. I mean, I think that there are, again, there's some societal issues we're going to have to deal with here. But ultimately, do I think that is AI going to be a positive impact on the industry and for the customers of the industry? And I think the answer is absolutely yes, for sure. And because I actually believe that the two big benefits of AI for tech companies in the long term here is, number one, and now we're already seeing this, is it's going to enable technology companies to deliver business value more consistently. So when you look at some of these AI-enabled solutions, instead of telling your customer, "Hey, I've got a great piece of hardware here," or a great piece of software that has all these features, you're really getting into the customer's workflows. You're really moving the efficiency for the customer, which that makes everything better. So I think the value propositions for tech companies goes up. It's much more anchored on business outcomes. And then also these technology companies are going to be able to do that way more efficiently and effectively. And we're talking about displaced employees, but you and I know that for most of the history of tech, it's been an issue of a talent shortage, right? Yeah. And so so that's the big benefits. I think the other two things I'll put on the table here is, for tech professionals, what does this mean to you? I think everybody's workflow changes. Everybody is going to be leveraging AI in some way. Even myself as a researcher and a writer, I'm leveraging AI. I'm sure you're leveraging it in what you do for a living and what you weren't a year ago. Everybody's going to have to get comfortable with that. And then the final observation I'll make is I do believe in what we'll call the short term. So maybe that's the next 3 to 5 years. The AI is going to create some huge market winners and losers in tech, because I think the companies that are AI aggressive, again, two things are going to happen. They're going to have better value propositions for their customers, and they're going to be way more operationally efficient. And that is going to allow them to grab a lot of market share compared to the laggards. So I think a lot of moving parts here, but again, ultimately, I am an optimist on the impact, on the industry.
Yeah, as an optimist too, I can't help but think that those businesses that use AI solely as a cost-saving exercise, they'll only make a few short-term gains. But those who leverage the best of people and technology, they're the ones that will thrive. So what advice would you give to leadership teams looking to leverage AI, not just for cost-cutting, but for doing other things like driving innovation and new business opportunities too? Because for me, that's where the magic happens, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think because let's be honest, AI as a capability, as a technology capability, is such a new thought so if you're haven't been studying AI for the last decade, whatever, and you're an executive, you're like, whoa, what is this thing, right? And I think the first job for leadership teams, I tell them, you need to go get an MBA in deploying AI capabilities. You need to understand what's practical, what are the use cases, how can it make a difference in workflows, that you really need to lean into that, right? You have to get almost like a new education. So I think that's, for all management teams, you should be just voraciously studying and reading and talking to anybody you can on this topic, so you feel comfortable that you understand how it fits into your business. And then the second thing I would tell management teams is you do need to have a sense of urgency. And I know we always go through these hype curves and everyone's like, oh my God, this is revolutionary and everything's changing. But I'm already seeing it. I get nervous about the difference now between how companies that are leaning into what they're already learning, what they're already deploying, right? How they're already adding new value to their customers, versus the ones that do have this wait and see mentality. I think that's going to be a losing posture. So I think if you're an executive out there, a leader in tech, and you're still not sure how serious you should get about understanding AI, I think that ship has sailed. You got to get on it. You got to swim on, get back on it, and have a sense of urgency.
100%. And we have covered some tricky points today, addressed the elephant in the room, or the 30-pound gorilla in the room, whatever you want to call it. But I'm curious, in your work, how are you supporting your members in navigating the rapid adoption of AI technologies, and what kind of resources do you provide to help them stay ahead? Because for people listening, it's not a journey that you should be taking alone, is it?
No, it's not. I think it's a time that everybody should be leaning in and learn from each other. We're all learning together. As I mentioned, we do a lot of case studies and document where our member companies are having success, so people can understand that. But the way I think about this research in AI and the artifacts that we create They really end up showing up in three buckets, and we just keep updating this, right? So the first one is we do research on why. Why is it critical for a technology company to lean into AI? Because we find that if leaders don't have a strong why, if they don't understand the why, they don't lean into, okay, I have to understand how to go do this. So we do research on the why. We do a lot of research on what we think good is going to look like. That's why we think about headcount modeling. That's why we think about value propositions in the future. And then last but not least, we do the research on the how to operationalize. So we just keep refreshing content in those big buckets to help our member companies move forward on this.
Well, it's been a huge pleasure to have you back on the podcast. Now, I always like to finish on a light-hearted question and ask you to leave the guest, ask you to leave everyone listening with one final gift, and that is a book that you would recommend or that has inspired you that we could add to our Amazon wish list. But so what book would you like to leave and why?
Yeah, well, your time is great here because I literally just finished this book. It's called Da Vinci's Mental Models. It's by Peter Hollins, and he walks through basically how Da Vinci lived his life of continuous learning and what tactics he employed, and he translates that into how we can all leverage the same kind of tactics. So I think it's a great book for anybody who considers himself a lifetime learner. I think in the world of AI right now, you better be a lifetime learner leaning into it. So I think it's a fantastic book.
Awesome. I'll get that added straight to the wish list. And for anyone listening, just want to find out more information about you, your community, the work you're doing, what's the best starting point for everything?
Yes, simplest. It's so simple. Just go to TSIA.com and launch from there.
Well, as I said, man, it's been, 12 months since we last spoke. I don't want to leave it 12 months until we speak again, even though it has gone super quick, but with so much value in our conversation today. And I'm so glad we were able to talk about some of the areas that a lot of people are thinking about but don't want to discuss, especially in an open forum. So I'd love to invite everyone listening to share the challenges that they're going through at the moment. But more than anything, just thank you for starting this conversation today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me back.
So as we wrap up today's conversation with Thomas, I think it's clear that artificial intelligence is not just a technological advancement. It's a transformative force that's reshaping the very fabric of the tech industry. From boosting operational efficiencies to altering employment landscapes, AI's role is both promising as it is challenging. So how are you seeing AI influencing your work environment or the industry that you're a part of? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences on this. Good, bad, indifferent. I want to hear it all. We can keep this conversation going. So please join the discussion by sharing your views, your insights, your experiences. You can do that by simply emailing me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, just @Neil C. Hughes. We will keep this conversation going. And that's it for today, though. I'll be back again tomorrow with another story of how technology is transforming our life, business, world, and everything in between. So thank you for listening today, though. Hopefully you'll join me again tomorrow. And until next time, don't be a stranger.